So today what we're going to show you is a few different mixtures, I'd say, of video and pictures of how to cut and assemble an ANFD's direct PTFE line. This is my plumbing of choice. There's a few reasons why I chose to go with ANFD's direct. A couple of years ago, I was actually working at a speed shop, and there were a few choices out there for Teflon lines. AeroQuip had their version. However, the problem is that they didn't really have standard looking aluminum lines past -6. They had a lot of smaller sizes, and other than that they had plain steel fittings which are prone to rusting. In the engine bay that this is going in, rust is not an option. So anything that was not stainless steel or aluminum, I tried to veer away from. So I started looking at ANFD's direct, and I saw that they had a plethora of PTFE fittings and hose ends in the full assortment of sizes. They didn't just stop at -6 like some of the the competition did at that time. So I gave them a chance, and kind of was probably one of their customers towards the beginning of them making those big lines. Now the original lines they had were a white Teflon. What they're currently using is a black Teflon, and black Teflon for the most part is known to have be impregnated with carbon essentially. The characteristics of the black Teflon are usually better than the white Teflon. The white Teflon can be subject to static electricity. When you're using it around something like oil, power steering fluid, things that aren't really directly flammable, obviously they'll burn, but if there's a spark introduced, it's not necessarily going to catch a fire. Fuel, it will, whether it be alcohol, E85, or regular gasoline. So what I'm going to show you is the method in which I use to cut these hoses. You can use a cutoff wheel. You can use a bandsaw. There's a few different ways of doing it. I find my way to be, the easiest, but it really, it's what works for you, and what tools you have access to. What I use here are some electrician grade cable cutters. Now these are pretty big ones. You can buy smaller ones, but I figure the bigger you go, the better you are, because you're only going to buy one set, and you'll be able to do, realistically, up to say like a -20 even. Because these will hold quite a bit. This is only a -10 line that we're cutting, but still, it's middle of the range as far as sizes go. So, without further ado, I've already marked my line where I want to do it. What I do is I wrap tape around, and then I cut directly in the center. That way, my marking is basically all set, and for the next line that I cut off of this one, let's trying to make sure I'm in the video. Perfect. Alright. So let's put that a little bit more towards the center. We're going to start to clamp down. And once we're at this point, what we're going to do is just go down and chop them. And you get a clean cut. The only thing that's going to happen at the end of this cut, which is inevitable, is you can see how it's turned into not a perfectly round circle. You get two little creases here at the end. Well, with the method that I show you, you're going to be able to easily get rid of those little creases there. Those are just going to be your excess when you cut the Teflon hose end to be 100% flush either way. Because right now, if you were to feel the Teflon, it's kind of, it's definitely not perfect. It's not a clean, sharp cut. But it did go right through it like butter. So we're going to be shaving that off anyways when we start unbraiding some of this. So that'll be for the next part. Alright, for the next part of this video, we're going to be going over the process of debraiding. So what we've got here is we've got the end that we just cut that has tape around it. So first thing you want to do, if it's not obvious enough, is take off the tape. However, what I like to do is reuse this section of tape here and go down a little bit. And I usually like, kind of pull on it a little bit tight. And when you can adjust this after, but basically you want it so that way the braid doesn't start loosening up more than you want it to. So one of the easiest ways that I found, move that line out of the way, to actually do this is to just take a flathead screwdriver. Now first, actually, let me not forget this step. You can see how that's uneven. Is I'll just put a pair of pliers around it and lightly kind of squeeze it back into more of a round shape, something like that. And that actually already starts, the process of debraiding. Since I'm doing this on my little bench here, I'm just going to grab something. Just kneel on. There we go. Alright, now I'm much more comfortable. So what we're going to do here is we are going to basically go in and we're kind of like pushing out a little bit. This is probably where you'd want to put your safety glasses on, just in case there's any loose braid. And we're feathering the stainless braid outwards. Now there's a point at which you're going to want to stop doing this process. And I'll show you when. So we're going to go grab our ferrule. Oh, and also, before we forget, since this is a hose that we're making, we want to put our hose ends on. Now obviously we can't do it at this end. I already knew that this end was freshly cut as well, because we just made a hose. So what you want to do is you want to put your hose ends on. With this end, same thing as before. I'm just going to tighten that guy down, but we're not going to take the tape off of this one, because we're going to get that end on without issue. So this end goes this way. Oops. And then this end goes this way, the opposite way. And then what I do is I'll put a piece of tape at the very end, sloppily, if that's even a word, in order to prevent those hose ends from kind of like falling over. So if you look, it keeps them in place there. It's just temporary. So we've got this set up here, and we're going to keep unbraiding a little bit. I can tell from the looks of it that it needs to go a little bit more. I would actually say quite a bit more, but we're going to take our ferrule, or olive as some people call them, and we're going to see how you can see a taper? The taper is lower on this side. It starts here and then goes up to full size basically. Well, the taper is always going to go facing the inwards of the hose. Now as you can see, we've got quite a ways to go. And that's going to continue our debraiding process as we're pulling this braid apart, which we're eventually going to snip off the excess, essentially. And what I'm trying to do is not actually jab or touch the P.T.F.E hose itself with the screwdriver. I'm kind of like going in the braid and kicking outwards, because you don't want to put any markings or any imperfections in the P.T.F.E itself, because there are two little rings that are protruding on the inside of this ferrule, which are also helping keep the seal. And then you'll see in some of my pictures, I took some really good pictures of the process for a line that I actually had to change because I moved a fitting on my block with a better positioning, so I just shortened the line, so I had to remake the end. But it shows how reusable these things are, and pressure tested just fine too. So we're pushing this guy down. I usually use this guy because it's kind of blunt, and my trick is, remember those two little creases we had at the ends here? Well, we're going to eliminate those completely by taking a fresh razor blade, box cutter razor blade, and going from the top here and slicing downwards. And I usually use a table or a bench like that and chop it. I'll try to show you that process if I can get here in the video. Now I'm going to check to see if I'm actually that far or not. I think I'm going to push it down a little bit more. I guess you can never be too safe with these because it's somewhat of a process to put them together, just like anything, but you don't want to do it twice. So that actually looks pretty decent there. But you know what? I think I'm going to go a little bit further. And in order to do so, believe it or not, my tape, this little piece of tape, has prevented the braid from going back any further. And that's why I do that. For that very reason. So we're going to lower it right here a little bit. Again, we'll go tight with it. Because the braid's gonna want to come off. It's just, you know, the pattern of it. It's the nature of it. So we're gonna go a little bit further here. Alright, so we're gonna press this guy down a little bit more. To where I feel a little bit better. I'm looking at the hose pretty straight. I'd say that's good. So, let me grab a razor blade, and I'll be right back with you. Alright, I had one prepped, so let's see if we can get this on video good. So we've got this hose end here, we've got it against a nice solid surface, and we're taking the razor blade and kind of going in a sawing motion to slice right through. And then what you might want to do too is go from the other side. Make sure you get any excess that might be there, because you want that nice and flat. You'll be able to feel if there's any issues. And essentially you're shaving that perfectly clean. Okay, so now that looks a lot different than it originally did. And I can show you the example. You get that right there compared to your cut line that looks like that right there. So what's next is a continuation of the debraiding, because now what we need, as ANFD's Direct suggests, you want 1/8 of an inch of this PTFE protruding beyond the ferrule. So in order to do so, we need to press the ferrule down more. Once you reach your max, you can feel it, you need to continue debraiding. So we're going to give it another round. And it looks like we're getting some space here, which is good. Let me move my camera back here, try to give you a better angle. I try to like kind of go around it just to give it an even push, or as even as I can get it. Got a pretty good eye, but what we're gonna do, because my eye is not as good as a digital caliper, is we're gonna measure this. So let me grab that. We're gonna measure this. So let's switch it over to fraction, and we know about an 1/8. It's about right there. So we've got 1/8. We're gonna match that up here, and from the end of the ferrule to the end of the Teflon braid, looks to be about 1/8 there. Right there. So, you're not ready to assemble the hose end yet, unfortunately, because nothing good is easy. So what we're going to do is we're going to take our tool of choice, and we're going to trim this stainless braid back. Because what you're going to notice is if I were to push this up with my thumb, right now it's way too long to even attempt it, so we got to shorten this down and trim it. What you don't want is for if this stainless were to come back up, which it's going to when you bring this hose end up and over, you don't want the stainless to go past the ferrule and into the Teflon area. Why do you not want that to happen? Because shortly after this Teflon is your threads on the male end of the fitting that actually has the hose end that's going inside. All the fittings are made out of aluminum. Aluminum is a pretty strong metal, but it's made for its its lightness and its resistance to any rusting. Even though these stainless steel braids are small, they're still much stronger than the aluminum. And imagine trying to thread in a bolt and you've got all pebbles or rocks in it or sand. It's not going to end pretty. Same thing with getting a stainless braid inside the aluminum threads. It's not going to end pretty. So you want to trim this back as much as you can while continually testing to make sure you're not going past it, because you also don't want it too short. You want a happy medium between not going past this ferrule when you push up the actual braid. Like I can kind of show you like this. Clearly that's going to go into the threads because you can see how long those braids are. You don't want it to go past that, so we're going to trim these back. I personally just use a regular set similar to these, but it's just a cutter end on it of wire clippers, and do a few at a time. It is time consuming, but it seems to be the most efficient way of doing it versus taking back too much and then having to start all over again. So slow and steady, I guess, is the best pace on these. And then once you're all set, we'll move on to the next phase. I'm not going to video record that because you'll probably close out of the video at that point. It'll take a little while, but I know I have some pictures of what it looks like afterwards, so I'll put that in the next section, and I may continue the video right after that too. But that's the next phase. Shortly after that, once you have that done, then it's the time to actually put the hose end inside, which I always suggest using a little bit of oil. I just use standard motor oil on the outside of the hose, and then also on the threads themselves, just so that way it's not kind of going on there dry. But yeah, we'll move on to the next phase, and I'll talk to you guys soon. Thanks for watching. Alright, so next step is we're going to take some oil, go around here, because that's where your P.T.F.E fitting is going to go around. And then also, we want some on the threads of the fitting as well. And you can use, a little less oil than what I'm using. What's going to be flowing through this particular line, as well as the next one that I'm making, is oil. So it won't make a difference for me. Just in case you're worried about, getting oil in, a fuel line or anything of that sort. So next up, what we want to do is, you can see how we've got our line prepared here. Essentially, when we press over, we're not going past the actual brass ferrule there. We've got 1/8 of an inch spaced out from the ferrule, and we're pretty much ready to assemble. So what you want to do is you want to try to evenly put this on your hose end here, and I usually give it like a little bit of a wobble at first to get it on nice and even, and then what you're doing is you're just really pressing down, and eventually it'll meet the end. So you've still got the 1/8 gap there, but if you notice at the end of the fitting before you put it on, you'll be able to tell. You'll see that there's almost like a little bit of a cone shape towards the end. I don't exactly know the machining process behind them, whether that's just part of it or whether that's intentional. It almost seems like AN Fittings directed that intentionally to get the actual P.T.F.E to go like this, because As you'll see in some still shots that I took of the process, you'll see how it actually flares out and how it makes that perfect seal. So what we want to do next is we want to take our tape off. If we don't take the tape off now, you'll never be able to get it off. So make sure you don't forget that. And really the only other next step is to push this over. Now what I usually do is once that's on there, is I'll give another double check here. Make sure that none of this braid can come loose. And I actually have a few stragglers here, so what better time than now to take care of those? So to keep this guy out of the way, I'm just going to throw another piece of tape on there. Alright, that seems pretty good. Let me take off my piece of tape that was blocking this. And you see we've got our fitting down here. So we're just going to press this guy through. I'm going to start threading. And when it sounds clean like that, meaning you're not getting you're just essentially getting the aluminum in there, and not any stainless steel braid, you can check it too, if need be. It looks clean. So, next up what you want to do is you want to torque this guy down. So, I don't typically use an AN wrench set. I'll usually use an adjustable, but to keep these from marring, you can use a bunch of different things. You can use a strip of plastic over the wrench. You could use painter's tape over the wrench. Some people put Teflon tape, but I think that's too thin, and then it goes through it. But essentially what you want to do is just keep tightening this guy down. The process of tightening this as close as you can to the base is going to make that flare, and it's going to make that that seal secure. So that'll be what's next is basically just a completed hose end. So just tighten this guy down while he's in your vise. With a 45-10, it's tough to get to the base. So what I usually do is I'll get as close as I can this way. I'll undo this. I'll basically put the hose end in the vise at that point, and then tighten this end. I just feel like doing it this way is a little bit more secure than starting off by trying to tighten the actual swivel end down. So other than that, we'll move on to the next phase. Alright, now one of the last segments I left you with was the assembly of the hose ends, and here we have a pretty much completed engine bay. Just made all the hoses up for custom power steering setup, catch can. You got more of the power steering setup on this side. And this was all using ANFD's direct Teflon hoses, or P.T.F.E to be politically correct, I guess you could say. P.T.F.E, as you may have read, has the the same chemical composition as Teflon, but Teflon is registered by I believe Dunlop, or DuPont rather. Their invention. So going over things start to finish, if you're looking to do a custom stainless steel braided setup, you've got quite a few choices out there as far as brands. One thing you're going to notice is that if you're going to go all out and you're going to make some Teflon hoses and go with kind of like the new generation versus using the older style rubber hoses, which are they can actually, the new ethanol fuels can actually seep through the pores on it. So considering you're going to go with Teflon, ANFD's Direct seems to be the best buy for your money, because you've got competition out there. You've got other hose end makers and everything, and you're going to see if you add up an identical shopping cart to ANFD's Direct, and if you throw one of their competitors in there, you're going to see quite a big difference in price. Now, as far as assembly and everything, for the most part, you're going to see that all the hoses, no matter which brand you get, they're all going to be the same level of difficulty. they all have, you know, the stainless wrapping, which you have to kind of pull back and trim back. They're all going to have that brass ferrule or olive in there. And they're all going to have, you know, so long as it's a straight, it'll have, you know, a swivel fitting on it. I mean, a angled fitting. It's all going to have a swivel on it. So it's definitely something to look into as far as, you know, building your whole setup through them. One thing I can speak from example from my personal experience is that their customer service is, you know, absolutely superior. I don't actually think I've had as easy of a customer service experience with them. You know, because I've been buying from this company for the past couple of years, and you know, no matter what, the way I see it, if you're gonna run a company and you're gonna run a business, you know, sometimes issues do happen. Sometimes something needs to be replaced. You know, sometimes something might be misshipped. Now, I'm not speaking directly on, you know, like something like that happened with AN's Fitting Direct, but anytime there was any, you know, slight issue or anything of that sort, AN's Fittings Direct were quick to resolve the issue. And I think that's a big difference between some companies where, you know, they'll sell you a well-marketed product, but is there going to be support thereafter, you know, if something does fail? You know, as with anything like this, you take that chance because you're completely customizing a setup, whether it be an engine bay or a motorcycle or anything, you know, of that sort. Even watercraft, you know, boats that are running, you know, your typical V8 car engines in them. So you do take a chance, and you know, I took a chance with AN Fittings Direct because that was the first order I had ever made with them a couple years back. And you know, I started off small. I started off making things like, you know, this little dash 4 line for my radiator overflow, and then I started making other things like fuel lines and, you know, stuff, you know, besides just this car too, just you know, other cars that I've worked on at the same time. So, but if you got any questions, you know, feel free to ask, and I hope my tutorial video definitely helped you out. And you know, I would stop by ANFDirect.com, check out what they've got. They've also got a few sister companies too that make some different things. One of the sister companies that they actually have makes a lot of the silicone couplers and T-bolts and things of that sort. I actually don't have my intake arm mounted because I just finished working on this car tonight. But the stainless 45-degree bend that I made my intake out of was from AN Fittings Direct. Some of my couplers in past projects have actually been from their sister company, which I didn't know they were affiliated until, you know, I had heard back from customer service, and you know, that was the email address. So they've definitely got, you know, I'd say a lot of products to choose from if you go throughout their, you know, a couple websites. They do intercoolers and everything like that too. So and just, you know, for I guess the fine print, I'm not affiliated with AN Fittings Direct or anything of that sort. But I know they, you know, a lot of people do run their products, and I wanted to kind of, you know, put up a tutorial because that's what my YouTube channel for the most part is about. Whenever I get a chance, I try to put up a cool tutorial. Like I just threw up one for doing a valve adjustment on you know, these particular motors, the dual cam Honda motors. So yeah, whenever I get a chance to help, I can, because you know, there's a lot of information on the internet, but there's not always the exact information you're looking for, or a video tutorial to go behind it either. So hopefully I filled in some blanks for everybody, and you know, let me know what you think. All right, thanks.